Hello and welcome to MTTV's In the Kitchen. I'm your host today, David Bradley. We're getting ready for the holidays and we've got some recipes that we're going to share with you today that I hope that you'll make part of your holiday tradition. The first thing we're going to make is holiday sticky buns, and these are absolutely amazing and very easy to make, and probably one of the first questions that you're going to be asked on Thanksgiving morning or Christmas morning, other than when is dinner going to be ready, is what's for breakfast. You may be inclined to say, get some cereal, I'm working on dinner here. But this is a very easy recipe, and I hope that you'll make this part of your holiday tradition. The first thing we're going to do to get started is we're going to cream some butter. And this is room temperature butter. I actually removed it from the refrigerator last night, and we're going to cream with it a 1/3 cup of packed brown sugar. And we're going to mix that. And while that's creaming, I've got about a 1/4 cup of pecans here, and I'm using fresh pecans. And these pecans actually came from the Extension Service, and they had a sale recently, and I bought several bags because you can freeze them, and these are absolutely great pecans. So if you need any, contact one of the Extension homemakers, and they can get you fixed right up. All right. You can chop those however fine you like. I like mine a little more coarsely chopped. Okay. And now our butter and sugar mixture is thoroughly combined. And right now we're going to go and we're going to get our pan ready. What I have here is just a regular half sheet pan. I've got a sheet of parchment paper, and then I've got our muffin tin. And I'm going to set it on here. What the sheet pan and parchment paper will do is it will help catch any spillage, should there be any, while it's in the oven. Also, it's going to serve as a dual purpose, because when we get our sticky buns out, we're going to dump them onto the sheet pan and onto the parchment paper. So the first thing we want to do, even though we have a non-stick pan where we're going to be putting literally sugar and butter into the bottom of these muffin tins, we're going to spray it real quickly. And whenever you do a spray, don't spray it over the floor. Take your pan over to the sink and just lightly spray each of the tins. Come back over here. And now we're ready to fill each of our tins with our butter and sugar mixture. Okay, now we're going to fill our muffin tins with our butter and sugar mixture. I'm just going to move that over here. Raise this up. And we're going to put a tablespoon of this butter sugar mixture into the tin. I'll tell you what, I'll take that off. Just a tablespoon. You kind of got to get dirty here, use your fingers. This recipe actually came from the Barefoot Contessa, Ina Garten. She's one of my favorite television chefs, and I had never heard of sticky buns made with puff pastry. The only thing I'd ever heard any type of cinnamon buns or sticky buns is made with a yeast dough. Well, yeast doughs take forever. You gotta worry about the letting it rise and letting it proof, and you got to wait forever. Nobody's got time for that. So right, and we'll just continue to fill the tin with the butter, sugar mixture. And now what we're going to do is just kind of press out our mixture. We've got it all spooned out. Just press it out just a little. And when we press our sticky buns down in there, it'll even spread it out even more. But I'm just pressing it out for now, so when we put in our pecans, it's kind of even. And this is what it will look like once you press it out just a little bit. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to kind of divide out our pecans, and usually just a pinch of pecans, and we're going to put them into each cup. And these are so good, especially with fresh pecans. And you can put as many pecans that you like in here. You can even, when we get to rolling out our dough here in a few minutes, you may even decide that you want to put pecans on the inside too. And the great thing about this recipe, it's pretty versatile. You can do it however you want to do it. And now we've got all of our pecans in there. And this is what it's going to look like. And now we're going to prepare our dough. All right, now I've cleared the decks, and we're going to get started on our dough. And I actually use puff pastry from Trader Joe's. Of course, that's in Lexington. And the reason I use this particular type of puff pastry is the puff pastry that you can get locally here in, just about any grocery store. The puff pastry is actually not made with butter, and that's just wrong. So you definitely want to use puff pastry that is made with real butter. So what we're going to do is we're going to just flour our board here, because we don't want our puff pastry to stick. And we'll open up our puff pastry and unroll it. We'll slide this paper out. And then we're ready to go ahead and butter the pastry. And what I have here is we're going to put up to about a tablespoon of butter on the puff pastry. And we'll just spread that out evenly, and this is going to help our brown sugar and our cinnamon that we're going to add here in just a few minutes. It'll help it stick. Nothing like putting more butter on already buttery pastry. And that's the great thing with this here, is you don't have to roll it out or anything. You just remove it from the package, and it's ready to go. And we're finishing buttering our pastry here. And now we're going to take a cup of brown sugar, and we're just going to sprinkle it all over. Now we're going to try to leave a seam up at the top, about an inch, 3/4 of an inch to an inch seam at the top, and that way when we roll up our dough later, it will seal properly. And after we get this all on here, and just spread it out, we're going to put on our cinnamon mixture. I've actually made these for some people that I work with and taken it to work, and Made it for, of course, some guests we've had at home, and they absolutely love it. It is a really good, quick, easy recipe. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sprinkle a tablespoon of sugar. I'm sorry, cinnamon. And we'll just sprinkle that pretty liberally all around. Just remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. That's why it's called homemade. All right. Now, at this point, if you wanted to introduce any type of dried fruit or raisins, which is probably the most common, but if you wanted to put in dates, dried cherries, cranberries, whatever, you could do that at this point and just sprinkle all over however many you wanted. Plus, you could add some additional chopped pecans, like I said earlier. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to roll up our pastry kind of tightly. And this is something you don't have to get in no hurry with. And what I do when I roll it up, I just kind of, any of the flour that's stuck to the bottom, I just kind of spread that out, and that way it kind of falls off the sides. Because we don't want it excessively floured going into the oven. And now we've got our, where we left that little seam of butter that's sealing pretty nicely, and we'll just kind of press down on that and put that on the bottom. And now we're going to cut it into pieces. Now, if you have any uneven ends like we do here, you can choose to cut those off if you like, to make it a little bit more formal, and I'm going to do that. We want everything to look pretty and even. It is the holidays, so everything has to look pretty for the holidays. And what I do is 1 puff pastry will make 6 sticky buns. So what I do is I just cut it in half, and then I cut into thirds. And just kind of eyeball it. And we'll do the same with this one. All right. So now we're going to pick them up, and we're going to press them down into that butter mixture in our tin. Just kind of press down when you put them in there. Press those down in there. And now we're going to repeat with the second dough. All right, now I've finished cutting the second dough. And I'm just going to place these in the pan. And like I said, again, just kind of press down. That's just going to spread that yummy butter sugar mixture in the bottom just all the way out. All right. All right. And now we're just going to place this in a preheated 400-degree oven for approximately 30 minutes. Okay, our sticky buns have been baking now for a half hour. And set them out here. And we need to allow them to cool for a couple of minutes. And you can just see how that cinnamon sugar and everything is just caramelized, and it just looks so delicious. Of course, the cooling time, the 2-minute cooling time, will allow the bubbling to cease, and just kind of show you here that beautiful sugar gooiness. And after a couple minutes, we'll dump them out onto our parchment paper here. Now, these recipes and all the other recipes that you'll be seeing on this show will be on Mountain Telephone's Facebook page. And be sure to check them out for recipes, deals that they have on their internet and television services, etc. Again, I told you before that that I've made these for some of my co-workers, for of course my family at home. They absolutely love them. It really doesn't take a lot of time. The only thing you have to remember to do during this process is you can kind of prepare ahead of time, is the night before you go to bed, take your puff pastry out of the freezer, put it into the refrigerator so it thaws properly, and set you out a couple sticks of butter that you'll be using, and allow those to come to room temperature. And if you'll do that and allow them to set overnight, they'll be perfect for use the next morning. Again, this is a perfect breakfast treat, but for sticky buns, these are perfect any time of day, and they go great with a cup of coffee or milk or just whatever you have. All right, now our sticky buns, they've pretty much stopped bubbling, and we don't want them to set any longer than a couple minutes, simply because they'll stick to our pan. So what we're going to do is we're going to dump these out onto our parchment paper. And there may be a couple bits of those pieces that you want to spoon out, but look how heavenly that is. It looks absolutely delicious. Gooey, gooey. It'll be so good. Now, the only thing better than these on the parchment paper is actually putting them in a plate and eating them up. These are so ooey, gooey good. Bon appetit. And now that we've got the sticky buns out of the way, we're going to move on to our next recipe, which is a sorghum and seasoned sugar glaze for a pre-purchased spiral ham. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take some of our locally produced sorghum, and we're just going to put it in a little small saucepan. And we're going to put that on medium heat, and we're going to allow that just to come to a simmer. And while that's heating up, we're going to prepare our sugar mixture for our glaze. And what we're going to start with is a cup of dark brown sugar. Now, if you have light brown sugar, that's perfectly fine. I prefer the dark brown. It has a little bit more molasses in it, and it's going to complement our sorghum really well. And to that, we're going to add a teaspoon of ground ginger. And of course, you can't have the holidays at all without some ground cloves. Cloves is real reminiscent of traditional hams as a seasoning. I actually make a whole ham that I prepare and actually put whole cloves in it. So I wanted to add a little bit of cloves to this too, just for the flavor. I'm going to add some nutmeg, and all this is a teaspoon. We've got some cinnamon, a teaspoon of cinnamon, a teaspoon of paprika, and I'm actually using bourbon smoked paprika. I was actually lucky enough to find some of this at a food store in Lexington, and it's absolutely delicious. And then we're going to add just a pinch of salt and a pinch of fresh cracked pepper. And then, using the cook's best tools, your hands. You just get in here and you mix the sugar and seasonings together with your hands until everything is very thoroughly combined. Okay, our sorghum came to a brief simmer and we've allowed it to cool for just a minute or two. What we want to do is just kind of heat the sorghum up pretty much to where it's not so thick, because we're going to use the sorghum in the consistency that it is now since it's been heated to glaze our ham. And just kind of going to go over it just like so. Gosh, that looks so good. And I always like to come way down on the sides. And if you want to, you might have something even better. If you want to kind of, as you're working this on, like pull your little hem apart a little bit and let that sorghum drizzle down in there. Talk about good. They just fall right on down in there. I like to get all the sides really good. And this is another great recipe, and it's a great example of how you can use some locally produced ingredients, and you're not only helping your local folks out, but you've got one incredible dinner too. Now that we have all that fully glazed, I'm going to just rearrange my ham here. And basically, now that it's glazed, our sugar mixture has something to stick to. So basically, we're just going to sprinkle the mixture on the ham, and then we're just kind of going to press it. And I wish you all could smell this seasoning. It smells absolutely delicious. And you just want to, again, press it into the ham. And I love this recipe for two reasons. One, it gets you out of purchasing one of those really expensive hams that you can find in a couple of ham stores in Lexington. Because I'm going to show you exactly how to get that scrumptious, sugary, hardened glazed crust just like they do here in just a moment. All right. Now this sugar mixture, you may not use all of it, and that's perfectly fine if you don't. You can reserve it for another ham, or this mixture is pretty much good on anything, like hams or porks or anything like that you would want to use. Now the next thing that we're going to do, I'm going to wash my hands real quick, and we're going to come back and I'm going to use my butane torch, and we're going to create that crust that you pay so much money for, and you can do it right at home for around $25 versus spending around $80 to $100 at the big fine ham stores in Lexington. So when we come back, we'll be doing that. Okay, now we're ready to do my favorite thing, torch the ham. This is where you actually get to get your tools either out of the garage, which I have a kitchen torch here that I purchased, but what we're going to do is we're going to caramelize that sugar. Now, if it starts to look like it's going to catch on fire, just slowly back your torch away. And we're just going to go over this ham, and you can just see, I'll turn around here to where you can see that sugar just caramelizing. seasoned sugar. So good. And this right here is the secret. This is exactly what the big ham stores do in Lexington. They torch their hams and they get about 50 or 60 more dollars out of you just from this, and this just takes just a few minutes. You know, this may, depending on the size of your ham, it may take up to 15 minutes to totally glaze a ham and make sure all the parts are covered. And again, if you see one flare up, don't panic. Just back your torch away and it'll burn itself out. The one thing about sugar is it tastes pretty good burnt. And we're going to just continue to go over the ham just like I am here. We kind of go to just a really slow back and forth motion until it caramelizes. And again, like I said, this will take up from 10 to 15 minutes depending on the size of your ham. All right, we just got done torching our ham and it looks absolutely caramelized and delicious. And so now what we're going to do is just plate it. Get a couple of big pieces on here. That's about the size that we want. I've got some homemade angel biscuits that I made earlier that we're going to pair with this. You can make sandwiches with it, or just whatever you like. But here is our beautiful caramelized our sorghum and seasoned sugar ham, served with angel biscuits. Absolutely delicious. And if you would like to have the recipe will be on our Mountain Telephone Facebook page. Now we're back and we're going to make our final dish of the day, which is fleur de sel caramels. And this recipe actually comes from the Barefoot Contessa Ina Garten. The only thing I've done is just slightly increase the butter that she uses because you can't go wrong with butter. But to get started, first we're going to pour in a half a cup of water. And then we're going to add a cup and a half of sugar. And then to that we're going to add a quarter cup of corn syrup. And I did this off camera, but what I did with my measuring cup is I actually sprayed it with non-stick cooking spray, and that way everything comes out and you don't have to worry about an eighth of a cup still being left in there. And then over here in this other pan, we're going to pour in a cup of heavy cream. And if we couldn't make heavy cream any better, we're going to add 6 tablespoons of butter. And then we're going to add a teaspoon of fleur de sel. Now what fleur de sel is, it's actually a French sea salt. It's actually kind of flaked, a little bit more coarse than just regular salt. Let you get a look at that. You can find this usually at Williams and Sonoma or at other specialty stores online. It's really good. It's really good as a finishing or topping on hams or steaks or pork or potatoes even. Really good. It's not as harsh as like regular table salt either. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to turn this on medium-high heat, our sugar mixture here, and we're going to turn this on almost a medium for our heavy cream and butter mixture. And what we're going to do with the heavy cream and butter mixture is we're going to just allow that to come to a simmer. And then we're going to remove it from the heat and just keep it warm. Just keep it on the stovetop. It'll stay warm until our sugar mixture becomes a warm brown color. So I'm going to get this stirred up. And the great thing about this candy, other than it being really easy to make, is once you stir it the first time and get everything kind of broken up, you don't stir it anymore. Basically what you're going to do is from time to time, you're just going to pick it up and kind of swirl the mixture around. Of course, you need to be really careful, of course. That's why I use a really deep saucepan. But just kind of swirl it around, and then as it goes through the cooking process, it'll turn a warm brown chestnut color. This caramel is excellent anytime. They're that good. But I usually serve them around the holidays. They're a really big hit. People love them. It's something they don't get throughout the year, and it's really, really good, buttery and delicious. All right, as you can see, our sugar mixture is boiling up very nicely. You can see at this stage it's not yet got any color, and usually to check the color of it, just lift it up off the stove. Of course, as it cooks longer, it'll get a lot thicker and you'll be able to see the color a little bit better. But this is probably at the midway through the cooking point at this moment. As you can see, our whipped cream, butter, and salt mixture is doing very nicely. Just give that a stir. And again, we're going to allow that to come to a simmer. And I'll go ahead and turn that down just a little bit, down toward low. Because like I said, we just want to basically get that warm and let it allow to simmer. The next thing I'm going to do here is I've got an 8x8 pan, and I've got it lined with parchment paper here. The parchment paper is probably the most aggravating part of the whole candy making process for this one. Just getting it to fit down in here. But once you get that, that'll usually take you a minute or two. But once you get it down in there, just take you a pastry brush with some vegetable oil. And you'll just want to brush that paper. And what this will do is this will allow the caramels to be released later when they're ready to be cut. So we'll just brush the sides and the bottom. You want to use a flavorless oil. You don't want to use like olive oil or any other oils that might have a flavor, because that flavor will get into your candy and you really don't want that. So make sure that you use a flavorless oil. So now we've got that done. We'll just set this back to the side. That way we're ready when our candy mixture is ready. Now if you'll look now, you can see that our sugar mixture has come a long way. We're about 3/4 of the way done here. Just going to swirl that a little bit. You can see it's got a lot thicker. It's also turning just slightly brown. And we'll continue to let that cook up until it becomes a warm brown color. It's very important that toward the end that you keep a close eye on this, because this sugar mixture can burn very easily. So once you achieve the color, it's time to remove it from the heat. Now our sugar has reached that perfect color. It's a warm brown color. Looks absolutely great. So now what we're going to do is we're going to pour in our milk, I'm sorry, not milk, our cream and butter mixture. Now it's going to boil up pretty violently, and that's okay. And then we're going to add a 1/2 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. And then we're going to Just stir that, and that will calm down here in just a moment. All right. And we're going to put in a candy thermometer. And we're going to allow this to heat to 248 degrees exactly. And then we will pour it out into our prepared pan. And it's very important that you don't go below or over this temperature. If you go too high, you're going to have hard candy, and you definitely don't want that. But if you don't heat it to 248, if you heat it less, then your candy is not going to set up at all. So 248 degrees is the magic number. Just stir it occasionally. And you all can't even imagine how wonderful this smells. This butter, sugar gooiness right here in front of you. Looks so good. All right, we're almost ready. Stir that up a little bit. You can see how it looks just like caramel. Looks so good. And keep checking. We want it exactly 248 degrees. This is something that is really good, especially at Christmas time, if you want to prepare a little cellophane bag of a little treat to maybe for your guests to take home. This is perfect. All right. So I'm going to turn off our heat here, and we're going to pour our caramel mixture into our prepared pan here. Be very careful. Just pour it slowly. Definitely don't want any of this on you. So just kind of pour it slowly. You can push it out with your spoon. That looks so good. All right. Now, we're going to put this in a refrigerator to cool. Well, it usually takes anywhere from about 45 minutes to an hour to cool, and then after it's cool, we're going to cut it into caramel squares, and we're going to be ready to eat. All right, now it's time to take our caramels out of the refrigerator. They've been cooling for a while now, and as you can see, after they become cool, they kind of pull away from the sides a little bit. You can still feel that it's still a bit pliable. So we're going to just lift out our parchment paper and spread that out. Now we're going to divide this with our knife into two. All right. And now we're going to do a log. We're going to roll each of these into a log. So as you can see, it's a little firm, but still pliable. And we kind of try to stay tightly with this. This right here is the beauty part. This is where we actually sprinkle on our fleur de sel. All right. And then we're just going to cut them into pieces. Now you can make these as big a pieces as you want. I'm going to just half mine. And then I usually cut them into fourths, and then you can cut them into thirds from there. however you like. And just kind of show you what this looks like. Looks so good. And I'm actually going to try one because I can't wait. That is the best stuff ever. You can taste the butter. Of course, the little bit of the sharpness from the sea salt. It's absolutely wonderful, melt in your mouth good. Again, if you want to try any of the recipes that we've shown today on the show, go to Mountain Telephone's Facebook page, check them out. I promise you they'll be a wonderful addition to your holiday. Thank you for watching.